Hello. Today I'm going to elaborate a bit about the initial triage of the whistleblower's report. The full description may be found in the book, and the cover of it can be found underneath. I will today highlight some of the key elements of the model for initial assessment of the report that the whistleblower shares with the legal entity in the course of internal reporting. The process actually is very similar to the general concept of initial triage of patients at hospitals. So the process is actually designed to assign priority and assess the severity of the case that has been brought to the attention of the hospital. But in case of the whistleblower's report, it's going to be about the priority and severity of the subject matter of the whistleblower's tip. And in this respect, actually, we may have, in principle, three instances. So first would be the case where the actual report is indeed grounded suspicion, and basically we believe that the alleged wrongdoing may have occurred, and therefore, according to the Polish whistleblowers legislation, we need to act upon this information, take the follow-up action, start with the internal investigation, and then, based on the conclusions from this investigation, decide on any further follow-up actions. For instance, we may decide to bring the case to the authorities, or we may change something in our controls environment within the organization, or take any other action that will be, in our opinion, relevant to address the whistleblower's tip, and we need to provide the whistleblower with the feedback from this internal proceedings undertook upon the whistleblower's report. But they may also be two other instances. First would be the case where the alleged wrongdoing seems obviously unlikely. So, for instance, it refers to the situation that did not have occurred in our organization, or the situation where we basically see that the report refers to another legal entity and not us. So in this case, if this is the legal entity from our corporate group, we may forward this case to the relevant legal entity and obviously inform the whistleblower that the case had been brought to the attention of another legal entity, which is, in our opinion, appropriate to handle the tip. Or it might be a totally unrelated legal entity, and therefore this tip does not refer to us, and we do not have to act upon this kind of information. And the third instance might be the case where this is not actually the whistleblower's tip. So the report refers to the other matter than the wrongdoing. So it's not about the breach of law as stipulated in Article 3, Item 1 of the Polish whistleblowers protection law, or this is not the optional case of the breach of internal procedures, or the breach of the ethical standards of our organization. And therefore, in this case, the tip does not require the follow-up action as designed by the Polish whistleblowers law, and may require another action, another response. Therefore, we might forward this case to the relevant unit. For instance, it might be only a feedback about something, like, for instance, Something that the person reporting does not like or would like to propose any changes, but it's not per se a report about the breach of law or the procedures or the ethical standards of the organization. And obviously, in this case, in my opinion, we need also to feedback the whistleblower or the person who shared with us the feedback, which is not the whistleblower's tip as defined by the Polish whistleblower's law. In respect to this initial assessment, I believe it might be very helpful to remember about so-called forensic golden questions. The tip, when we receive it, we need to read it, obviously, or hear what is said to us if the whistleblower called or sent us a recording. And from this information provided, we need to try to understand whether we know what may have happened, when, where, who might have been the perpetrator of this wrongdoing, how it may have happened, by what means the perpetrator committed the alleged improper action, and why it may have happened. Obviously, the whistleblower's tip may not consist all the details as required by the aforementioned golden questions. However, our role is to actually try to gather as much information, initial information as possible to address the questions or address as many questions as possible so that we may conclude whether this particular case should require our attention, whether it is a whistleblower's report, so it really refers to the breach of law or internal procedures or ethical standards within our organization, and whether this is consistent enough that we believe it's likely or possible or there is a risk that the reported wrongdoing took place. If this is another case, which is not the whistleblower's report, or the information provided is insufficient to conclude, then obviously we do not need to take any action, and we just need to feedback the whistleblower if possible, obviously. But most of the whistleblowers platforms provide the possibility to communicate even anonymously with the whistleblowers. In order to determine whether the information provided is reliable, we might need to understand who reported. Obviously, some of the reports, some of the tips may be anonymous, and obviously our legal entity needs to decide whether the anonymous tips should be covered by the whistleblowers program. In some instances, but where the specific legislation provides for the obligation to manage, to handle also the anonymous tips, we have no other choice than to take it. But the general rule under the Polish Whistleblowers Act, or Whistleblowers Protection Act, is actually to decide by the organization whether it allows for the anonymous whistleblowers tips. So we may try to determine whether the tip is reliable based on the information who provided the report, which does not mean obviously that anonymous tip is unreliable. We need to understand or try to understand whether the reporting person was a direct or indirect witness of the instance reported. So if that is the direct witness, then it's better obviously for the case, because we may ask for follow-up questions, and by asking the whistleblower where possible the follow-up questions, we may determine whether the tip actually provides consistent and reliable, obviously subjectively by us, considered by us, reliable information that is worth to conclude or may be concluded as justified or grounded suspicion that the alleged wrongdoing may have happened. But if this is the indirect witness, the person who hasn't seen the actual wrongdoing but has heard that someone else has committed a wrongdoing and heard it from a third person, then obviously the value of the information, the reliability of the information is limited, because the person may have heard incorrectly, may have remembered incorrect detail, or may have got incorrect impression about the content of the information provided. And it very much depends on the circumstances or the background of the process when the information about the wrongdoing had been captured. And obviously this is the initial triage, so it does not mean that at this stage we take any exhaustive steps, we start any investigation. It's not yet this moment. It's about very initial determination whether this case is a whistleblower's tip and whether this case is not obviously unlikely. So if it is likely and it's not obviously wrong, or it's not associated with something else than whistleblower's tip, in my opinion, we should take action. It's better to take action than to leave it and take a risk that the whistleblower will go for the external reporting to the authorities, which is always less friendly for the legal entity. Let's call it this way. Let's phrase it this way. Because when the report goes externally, it does not go internally first. We have less time to take action. We have less time to internally investigate and actually try to build our understanding of the subject matter of the whistleblower's tip. So, in my opinion, from the controls environment perspective of the legal entity, and from the perspective of early detection of any potential wrongdoing in the organization, it's always better to take action if we believe the tip is not totally unlikely, unreliable, then actually to ignore it and take a risk that the tip will go externally, because actually by taking action internally we win time required for reflection, basically, and for gathering more information and preparing to determine what may have happened and whether this alleged wrongdoing actually indeed happened, and what we should do about it. Especially that sometimes these allegations are not grounded, but we may determine it only after the internal investigation. And when it goes first to the external report and law enforcement takes the initial action, very often this initial action starts to live its own life, starts to go public, and actually the adverse consequences for the organization, for the reputation of the legal entity may be very damaging, even if at the end of the day the prosecutor or the law enforcement will drop the case and determine that actually no breach of law took place. But we don't want to have this initial phase of the criminal investigation and being subject of this criminal investigation because it may be damaging for our reputation. So technically it's always better to act by ourselves and start this determination internally. So I guess that would be enough for now to highlight the key elements of the process described in the book. The next episode will be focusing on the planning of the internal investigation. So it's when we actually decide that there is grounded suspicion and we need to act upon it. For now, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for bearing with me. And see you in the next episode. Have a great afternoon, evening, or morning, depending when you watched this material. Thank you and goodbye.